Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by these great sponsors. Axon started out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. Imagine having 100 years of tire and wheel knowledge in your back pocket the next time you sell a piece of ag equipment. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit axontire.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Valley Transportation. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 or go to valleytransinc.com for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. This podcast is also brought to you by Ag Direct. No matter how you buy your ag equipment, from a dealer, auction, or a private party, Ag Direct can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com.
Moving higher in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving higher time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving higher.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. Markets with Chip Nellinger. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. For more information, go to axontire.com. Axon Tire is giving the loyal listeners of the Moving Iron Podcast a free resource mouse pad. It's got all kinds of stuff on there that you can look at as far as tire conversions and those kind of things. So if you're interested in getting one of those, go to axontiretips.com. Read those articles while you're there. A lot of good information there. But go down to the bottom, check out that form, fill that form out, and they will send you 2 of those in the mail. So if you're interested in getting a mouse pad, go to axontiretips.com, and they will send one over to you ASAP. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 for all your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. And no matter how you buy your ag equipment, whether it's from a dealer, an auction, or a private party, Ag Direct can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com. Tractor Zoom has access to over $20 billion worth of heavy equipment sales data. Tractor Zoom's Iron Comps is the industry's trusted solution for transparent heavy equipment values and auctionable pricing insights. Chip Nellinger is with Blue Reef Agri Marketing from Morton, Illinois, and he's nice enough to come on and talk about what's happening in the marketplace. So Chip, how you doing this morning, man?
Hey, doing well. How you doing, Casey?
Pretty good, man. So a couple of interesting things I saw pop up. There was for the longest time, there was a pretty good spread between, the front month corn contract and December corn. And I just was going through my alerts on my phone the other day, and corn popped up, and I had to stop and look at it twice because they were September corn and December corn were exactly the same price. What's collapsed that spread between front month corn and December corn?
Well, that September contract on corn and beans to a lesser extent, it's a little bit of an in-between, right? Because you oftentimes have some new crop corn coming out of the south, the Delta area. So September contract's kind of a little bit old crop, a little bit new crop. And when we rolled that contract here a couple weeks ago from July being the front month and now September is, the spreads were not much different than back then. So it's a little confusing to explain, but when you look at the cash market, the cash corn market right now, it's a basis situation. So, if they were 60 over July futures 2 weeks ago, when July was, a buck 30, 40 over the December and the September, now those elevators and grain terminals switched their bid, and now they'd be like a $1.20 over the September. So you still have really high priced cash corn, well into the sevens. And it's just a basis and a spread situation. So that September contract being partially new crop, you have some new crop supplies by the time that September contract goes off the board in most years. It's oftentimes you see that type of a spread relationship. And now, the September contract is about 3.5 cents above the December. So there's always spread activity going on. That's going to be a function of how tight the immediate cash market is. When there's an inversion like that, with September being over the December contract, or the July was, $1.25 over the December contract, it's just an illustration of how tight the cash market is. We're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as old crop supplies go here. We're trying to race to the new crop, and get the pipeline refilled with new crop corn. And so that's the function of those spreads. And you have to kind of back up and look at what the cash spreads are too, not just the future spreads. And in most places, at least here in the Eastern Corn Belt, we're $1.10 to $1.30 over basis over the September contract. So, you're still looking at, well over $7 cash corn right now.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. All right. So incredible intense heat over the last 2 weeks. It's just been bad. This last 4 days especially have been just, the cherry on top of what we see happening there. Out here we had, I think Monday's high was 108. Sunday's high was 99. Yesterday's high, Tuesday's high was 97 or something like that. So it's just been incredibly hot. Back your way, I've been watching the weather out in Iowa, and Illinois, and Indiana. It's been, not 108 degrees, but it's been very hot, for what we see happening. And we're right kind of in that pollination phase of corn, some tasseling going on, those kind of things. Market's not quite reacted to that like I thought they would react. I guess what's your thoughts with how the market's reacting right now with what we see in there? What's the big driving factor that you see right now that's pushing these markets lower?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things underneath the surface. I agree with you. Given the heat that you guys have in the Western Corn Belt, it is a little bit of a head scratcher that the corn market especially didn't act better than it did. Now, part of that is they've added some rain chances for some areas of the Western Corn Belt, particularly Iowa. And it seems like this market has a history, has been programmed into thinking that as Iowa and Illinois goes, the entire corn crop goes. And that probably was the case 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Right now, Illinois and Iowa account for about a third, maybe just a touch under a third of the total corn crop in the country, those two states alone. But with that being said, that means 2/3 of the corn crop is raised outside of Illinois and Iowa. So the market gets really fixated on weather, rain chances, and rain patterns in Iowa and Illinois. Illinois, all things considered, probably is the best of the best anywhere right now. The northern half of Illinois is with maybe one more rain and no hot temperatures in August is a hair away from a massive crop, maybe record for some producers. And then, you get further west and 5-6 days of 105, 110 degree heat is really going to sap that corn. So the market always has a really tough time trying to figure out what the effects of dry conditions, hot conditions is going to be. They go by crop conditions. They improved this last week, particularly in Illinois and Iowa. There's not a great correlation between crop conditions and final yields, but it's at least something the market goes on every week. And it's, I think also the market has been conditioned to, probably rightfully so, that we're going to yield it, right? We can put these hybrids through a lot of stress, spoon feed them just tiny doses of precip at the right times, and they can still yield, and that's true. But, I think in my mind, talking to producers, even this last rain event in the Eastern Corn Belt over this past weekend, we got really nice rains Friday and then some follow-up rain Saturday and Sunday in areas. Really dry areas got some of that rain, but they are not at full potential, right? They were too hot, too dry for too long. And it's going to stabilize things. Maybe they're not looking at an absolute disaster, but it's the top end's off of that. And so, what's this heat going to do in the West? It's just really a difficult time for the market to figure out what really is out there in the field. And by default, it's hard for the market to rally. You look at a seasonal, 10, 20, 30-year seasonal average price move, and once you get past the 4th of July, typically you see, lower prices. And that's why the market just has a really difficult time in trying to discern what really is out there. And they've been fooled too many times thinking, oh, man, you guys in Nebraska and Kansas and Iowa are burning up. It's 105. Last year's a good example, right? And it was so dry in Iowa, so hot and then they came up with a massive state yield.
Right.
And so, it's
Yeah.
kind of like the boy who cried wolf, right? But I think this might be a year that's a little bit different. And then the way the USDA does their crop reports now, we'll get it used to be they started doing field surveys in August. And a couple years ago, I don't know I think it was pre-COVID. It wasn't a COVID thing even. I don't think it was more of a budget thing. They stopped doing that, and they do it in September now. So we've got a long stretch here before the USDA goes out and does actual, kernel counts and population counts and, looks at pod counts on the beans. And, that's somewhere in the first 10 days of September. So between now, essentially the 1st of August to mid-September is a long way away, and the market's just left to kind of hang in the wind. And then underneath that, this is a long answer, Casey. I know I'm rambling here, but underneath all that is this story that just won't go away about Russia allowing Ukraine to export some grain.
That's my next question.
And I cannot wrap my brain around how that's going to happen. If Russia agrees to it, it's only because it's going to be wildly beneficial to Russia, right? And so if I'm sitting here in Central Illinois, a dumb farm kid from Bradford, Illinois, in a class of 24, and I can figure this out. I would think the rest of the world could figure it out. And so it's hard for me to believe anything's going to come of that, but it won't go away. And I mean, it seems like the talks are progressing, and they might get something done on that. So obviously that's going to change the supply situation if that happens, and Ukraine can export some corn and wheat. They still have some corn and wheat old crop stocks left. Russia has, you've heard the stories. They've been bombing bins and grain facilities and stealing grain, moving it into Russia and selling it. So that there is some amount of grain left in Ukraine from an old crop standpoint. And that story won't go away. As crazy as it is, it seems to me, that's something that's held us back a little bit. And I think the market would have responded better to this hot, dry weather that we're seeing if it weren't for that, Ukraine grain movement story out of the Black Sea. And even if they come to an agreement, I don't know the reality of how long that's going to take. I mean, there's facilities destroyed, the ports are mined.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be a 3-month process to get things back to where they can do that.
But then you got to find people to do all that stuff. That's the other side of it.
Yeah, and then the next thing is the insurance part of it, the shipping part of it, the personnel. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's great on paper. Let's draw it up on the chalkboard, and the market sees that. But the reality of getting a lot of grain moved out of there might not. It might be a different story than the way it looks on paper. Also, on top of this too, it's a little surprising that the market hasn't reacted more to the weather out of Europe. I mean, as brutally hot and dry as we are, they're every bit as much, if not more.
Right.
And so, they're on the same growing season as us in the Northern Hemisphere. They raise a fair amount of corn, and obviously other crops as well. But, their corn crop is in fast retreat. I have read that that's even spilled over into some of the western portions of Ukraine, some of their crop areas. So they're going through a pretty brutal hot, dry stretch at not a good production time for their crops in Europe. And, it's going to be an interesting situation here between the supply side, the demand side, and the supply side is even more confusing to the market because how much is Ukraine going to be allowed to export, if any? And so when you see all that uncertainty, it's hard for, these big funds to take a big stand and say, hey, I feel real enthusiastic about, getting long corn right now, not knowing what the Ukraine Black Sea situation is going to be. So you've seen this liquidation phase in the market, not reacting as friendly to bullish weather as what I would have expected.
Yep. All right. So another thing that we're seeing with the heat is the stress that we're seeing on production cattle. As you look at the feedlot phase and what that looks like as you go through there, animal kills and those kind of things, they're popping up all over the place because of heat stress and those kind of things. Market's reaction to wholesale box beef, or the wholesale, jumped up about $2.02 yesterday for choice, and $1.07 for select. If you're looking at that, big movements there in cattle. And we've been seeing these movements. This is not like this is anything new, but you add that stress on top of there, and you talk about gain and everything else that goes along with that. What's your reaction to what you see happening in the cattle market right now?
Yeah, I for a while I've been really friendly on cattle. Now the problem cattle are going to face, much like corn, is the strength of the U.S. consumer.
Sure.
Yes, and energy prices, gasoline's come down a little bit, but it's not 5 1/4; it's only 4 1/4. Yeah, it's still expensive. So, can the consumer demand stay strong? I think it's just going to exaggerate things. I think we're going. We're kind of at the tail end of the cow and breeding stock liquidation phase. That's has put a little bit of extra meat on the market for a year. I think we're towards the end of that. I think this heat, it's not an immediate reaction always. It kind of takes sometimes several weeks to kind of sift through to all right, they're not gaining as good. We have some death loss. That takes some time to sift through the market, but it should continue to be a friendly influence. We got a cattle on feed report. I believe it's Friday after the close. So we got a cattle on feed report this week. Pasture conditions are still horrible. It's just a bad situation for those cow-calf guys. They haven't had a chance really to restock, for 2 years now. And so I think things are going to continue to tighten up, but that's a slow process. They talk about the 7-year cattle cycle. It takes a while to sift through the system, but this heat isn't going to help. It's going to probably continue to tighten up supply, shrink supply just a little bit, and I think long term that's going to be friendly. And again, it gets back to the consumer. How can we get the consumer through this inflation and continue to see them spend money on beef? I think that's part of the reason that hogs have been kind of counter seasonally on fire here. Typically you're past the main demand period for pork, and pork cutout's been on fire. The futures have been rallying. It's been a kind of a weird time to rally so aggressively in the hogs, and I think that might be part of it. Maybe we're seeing the consumer shift to a little bit lower price protein, and pork and poultry are going to benefit on that if they're switching away from beef a little bit. But so far, the beef demand seems to be pretty good too. So I think we're pretty even keeled here. The cattle market's been choppy, but it's held together and kind of in this big sideways range. Feeder cattle have firmed up. Even when corn rallied the other day, feeders held it together. So I think the cattle complex is in really good shape here to maybe see some much better prices into the third quarter, fourth quarter of this year, and probably even the first quarter of 23, as long as we can kind of keep the consumer pocketbook, held together a little bit here.
Yep. All right, last topic. Talk about energy for just 1 second here. Take a look at oil. Brent crude is just a little bit over $100, about 105, and you look at West Texas, and it's just like 40 cents under $100 barrel. Take a look at ethanol. Ethanol's had a similar decline as well. If you look at where ethanol was first part of July, up around about 248, 250 a gallon, to where it's at now at about 216. A similar decline as far as ratios go and those kind of things. As you look at that ethanol, gasoline, diesel, biodiesel relationship, what are your thoughts there on those two topics?
Well, I think that generally ethanol margins are still held together pretty well. We've seen a little bit of a downtick in some of the weekly grind numbers, but I think in general there's still good profitability on the ethanol side. I think as I look at crude oil and I take a look at that crude oil chart, come way down off the highs. We're seeing these big swings, $4-5 range days from low to high. And to me, I think we're kind of right on that fence, right? And we need more information. And the fence meaning we're not done with inflation. It was a correction, and we're going to continue to see stronger energy prices into the year. That's A, right? And if that's the case, we probably need to see the crude oil market and the energy markets not get much deeper than they did over the last week or two. On the other hand, you've got people saying, no, we're rushing into this world recession, and we're going to have this massive slowdown. Where demand pulls way back, and if that's the case, then you're going to see some. I think the tip-off would be you get crude oil futures setting back below the recent lows in here from 10 days ago. And so I think the energy markets are right on the fence, as are the financial markets, kind of trying to figure out, are we going to have like a 2008 type, just the brakes get, they just pull the lever and the whole world economy seizes up? Mm-hmm. Or is it going to be kind of the little dip and we don't hurt the overall demand much? And I think that's yet to be seen, which makes these big, choppy days. I think the one thing that's pretty certain is Saudi Arabia isn't going to help us. OPEC, is pumping probably about as full capacity as they can. And then you throw the European and United States energy policy in there, and it's just ludicrous. We could pump till the sky is blue, but, our policies restrict that for whatever stupid reason. So
we can sure sell it, though, all over the world. We can do that. That's fine, but we can't keep it domestically.
And buy it from, some sworn enemies.
Yeah.
Did you see that part of the strategic reserve release, some of that went to China?
Yeah, I saw that. It's awesome. I'm so excited.
Here's the problem, Casey, that I think at least some people are waking up to. It's all on purpose, right? Like, you rack your brain saying, here are the answers right here. They're just staring you in the face. They're smart people. They know the answers. They choose otherwise on purpose for the sake of whatever change they think they want. They're purposely destroying it and are attempting to. So, votes count. At least other than Illinois, they count.
I was reading that article. I'm like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's called a strategic reserve. That means that it's a long-term thing that they're planning on. If things go sideways, we can take care of it. And it's like giving the fox in the hen house. Here's 5 chickens that you killed. You go ahead and keep a couple for yourself. Looking out for you, pal. Okay. It's the same. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life, but
it really is. It's mind-boggling. But unfortunately, that's the world that we live in right now. So and that's why I think I probably would tip if I had to make a wager. I'm wagering that we haven't seen the end of high crude oil prices. And the products, heating oil and unleaded have been stronger because on top of that, we have a refining issue, I mean, and it goes back to the energy policies that we have. They're just not conducive. When you have companies put billions of dollars into a pipeline and then on January 10th with a new president, he takes his trusty pen out and just wipes away billions of dollars of investment. Who in their right mind is going to put money into new technology, new wells, new refineries, new pipelines, when they don't know if they're just burning money or if they're going to get a return on that money? It's capitalism 101, econ 101 is what it is.
Yeah. Well, it's the same deal too. Even if we went out and started producing all of our own oil again, and we're at our refineries right now are running at max capacity as it is right now, and the refineries now are taking a look at which product am I going to make the most money on when I go develop it. Right? Is it gasoline? Is it diesel? Is it airplane fuel? Whatever it is, what am I looking at now? And I mean, until we get a refining situation figured out to where we're going to put in another 15 or 20 or however many refineries we need to bolster our fuel situation that we have now. I mean, it's the same story, over and over again, that we're at max capacity. We're one hurricane away from having $9 fuel. I mean, it's just those kind of things like that just keep popping up over and over and over again. And you'd think sooner or later that just the sheer number of people that are being under all this pressure right now when it comes to inflation and high interest rates and so on and so forth, or higher interest rates, so on and so forth, that you're like, we're building in whatever state we are in. We're building 3 new refineries. We're going to do that, and then it just, I don't know, that's a whole nother podcast, dude. So,
well, it is quite frustrating. I agree with you, but unfortunately, it's such a huge driver of our economy too, right? And the world, whether you like it or not, the world runs on energy, right? And petroleum. And that's just the driving is just one part of it. It's
all the
mind-boggling how many products, are petroleum based, and it's just unfortunately the small minority whack jobs have got the ear of the media and the minds of the consumer, right? Like the electric vehicles are the way to go. And
well, this kind of puts the cherry on top, and then just kind of getting off the weeds here, but this will be the final word here. But I don't remember what oil company it was, but they wanted to buy 1,000 North Face jackets for their guys. I can't remember what it was, but North Face says, no, we're not going to sell them to you. And the oil guy goes like, you understand that 98% of your coat's made by oil, right? And just like, that's just the cherry on top, dude. I mean, that's just
exactly. I think that's a good way to sum up the energy policy of Europe and the United States right now.
Pretty much so. All right, Chip, good stuff as usual. Folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what you're doing at Blue Reef Agri Marketing. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, best way is just call our office directly. That number is 309-550-7213. Love to chat with you, talk to you about what you're doing on your risk management plan and how you might be able to improve that and get better results.
Right on. I am Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Go to LinkedIn at Moving Iron Podcast, and you'll see the video version of this. Go to the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel, and you'll see all the stuff here that we just talked about, but in Technicolor, not any other color, just Technicolor. Haven't quite sprung out for 4K yet, so we're wanking our way up the chain. So check that out if you're interested in seeing that. Go to MovingIronLLC.com. Everything Moving Iron related is there. If you want to check out the Moving Iron Summit coming up here in Nashville, Tennessee, September 6th, 7th, and 8th, all that information's there. Or you can send me an email at MovingIronPodcast at MovingIronPodcast.com. My good friend Alex Shevchenko is still in Ukraine running around handing out humanitarian aid. Go to the show notes. There's a GoFundMe link. Check that out. And Alex would greatly appreciate whatever you can throw his way to keep him running what he's doing. So, with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Chip Nellinger. Let's give me some iron, folks. Out. Axon Tire is going to have more tips, tricks, and client advice throughout the year and in September at the Moving Iron Summit in Nashville. If you're looking to sign up for the event, please head over to MovingIronLLC.com. We hope to see you there. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 or go to valleytransitinc.com for all of your trucking needs. At Valley Transportation, our goal is to help you reach yours. And no matter how you buy ag equipment from a dealer, auction, or a private party, AgDirect can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com.
Moving higher in the 21st century.